Hi, this is David Mastio, California editor for the Center Square, and this is California in Focus. As always, I'm joined by Kenneth Schrupp, a California reporter for the Center Square. Today we're talking about, of all things, pets. Kenneth, can you tell me what the state legislature is doing about pets?
That's right. California's legislature is proposing that landlords must accept all pets for residencies unless there is a, quote, reasonable reason that they won't accept a pet. A landlord also would have to accept an application before asking about someone's pet status.
I understand from your story that these are all commonly used or commonly held pets. So would that include like snakes and gerbils and...
Well, snakes are pretty common pets. I would assume that would fall under common. Common, it's not really clear who gets to decide what common is. And it's not really clear who gets to decide what a reasonable pet restriction is either. It's also worth noting that this bill was introduced as a spot bill that is just one short little sentence that says, it is the intent of the legislature to enact legislation related to a landlord's ability to prohibit common household pets in residential tenancies. So the actual legislation really doesn't say anything because it's going to be amended and added to at a later date. Now, the assembly member who introduced it, Matt Haney, who represents parts of San Francisco, he put out a press release that really detailed more of what he wants this to be. So he wants to enact a measure that would prohibit blanket pet bans and rental units and requires landlords to, quote, have reasonable reasons for not allowing a pet in a rental unit and only allows landlords to, as I said earlier, ask about pet ownership after a tenant's application has been approved. This is important because last year, Haney introduced another bill aimed at landlords that would limit security deposits to just 1 month's rent. And it's very often that in the case of high damages from pets, that you can have pet damages far exceeding what 1 month's rent is. Imagine your rent is $1,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Your pet ends up scratching the walls or soiling a lot of the carpet that all needs to be replaced. That could cost thousands of dollars, and it's a lot more than the security deposit can cover.
And commonly in rental situations, the security deposit is used as the last month's rent.
Yes, you do see people often doing that. Often landlords won't let you do that, and they'll give it to you after they've done the final move-out inspection. In California, there are very strict laws on when the landlord has to give you back your money and how much they're allowed to deduct for. And small claims really does give you a lot of opportunity to recoup some money that you think your landlord has unfairly held.
Do landlords say that, or are there landlord associations that say this is going to cost renters more money on the front end?
Yes, they say that rents are going to have to be higher to make up for this fact. I spoke to Deborah Carlton. She's with the California Apartment Association, and she said there'd be higher rents because you're not going to be able to collect this damage through security deposit. What does that really mean? If the security deposits aren't high enough, they're just going to have to charge more in rent to cover potential damages from having a pet. And you can't exactly charge someone a higher rent retroactively after you learn that they have a pet because you can't ask about their pet status until the application has been approved. This means that they're just going to charge more rent upfront to everyone under the assumption that everyone does have pets. And Haney's office does allude to the fact that the majority of people do have pets. They say 70% of renters are pet owners, while just 30% of rentals tend to be pet friendly, which means that most pets and most units are not really legally in there, which means that landlords get left without any way of really covering this damage. They might not have property liability insurance that will cover damage from these pets because they don't know they exist in the first place.
There's a lot of distance between having a pet like a fish and having 14 cats that totally destroy a apartment. So it's not clear how much it means that 70% have a pet. There's lots of apartment-friendly pets you can have.
Yeah, that's true. There is something I do want to get at, though, that the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles told me about. Daniel Yukelson, their executive director, told me about some problems that you might have from just allowing any pets into most units. Some residents might have had a bite accident and are scared to be near animals. Some people might be really allergic because the dandruff does get up in these common vents and can spread throughout the whole building. He also pointed out one interesting thing, which is that some insurance companies won't insure certain dog breeds. So, according to analysis from Forbes, all home insurance companies ban pit bulls, Rottweilers, and Dobermans from coverage. So if you have any of these dogs, you as a landlord can't get insurance. You as the pet renter probably can't get insurance. And it leaves people very exposed to liability.
This is a weird move for the California legislature to consider, given that there's all kinds of things going on in California to make housing cheaper, right?
Yes and no. California is a mix of adopting measures that can increase the supply of housing while adopting measures that greatly reduce the desire to build more housing and drive people to sell their units because it's just not worth managing a building in California anymore. In terms of promoting housing construction, there is the bill that Scott Wiener put forward and got signed into law that allows people and developers to do something called builder's remedy when a area has not adopted a housing planning document that would allow them to meet their state allocated regional housing needs. So if your city doesn't file this document and get it approved by the state housing department, then people can just go in and build whatever they want anywhere. Another important piece of data is the accessory dwelling unit construction that has accounted for the entire increase in housing production in California in the last few years. Yes, California is taking measures to try to make it seem like it's easier for people to build, but these come with a lot of requirements like inclusionary zoning, which requires that certain portion of the units be essentially loss making because they have to be affordable to people of a certain income level relative to the area median income. That discourages a lot of developers from building, especially when you have cities like LA creating these property transfer taxes that can be 5%, 7% of the property's value, which if you look at the numbers, that tends to be what a developer's profit is because they're only putting up 20% of the money for a building. So only get 20% of the profit. If you as a developer are having to also pay that 7% tax, then you're essentially not going to get profit from the building. So that's something that's stopping a lot of private development on the larger scale that would alleviate the housing crisis. But if you're looking at the accessory dwelling units, that tends to be somebody who is a homeowner or a small landowner who's turning a garage, some extra space in their backyard into a small, easily constructed unit that can be built quickly, approved quickly, and someone can move in quickly. Often it'll be an in-law that moves in. Maybe grandma wants to downsize her home, be closer to the kids. That's a great solution. But in aggregate, is it enough to alleviate the state's housing crisis? No. We have an approximately 4.5 million unit housing shortage, as some UChicago economists calculated. And these small tweaks really are not enough to address the scale of the problem California is facing.
I'm David Mastio with the Center Square, and we've been talking with Kenneth Schrupp, California reporter for the Center Square. You can read his work at thecentersquare.com. Thank you for listening to California in Focus, and please subscribe to our podcast.
Some people would call him a loser. He ran for state office. He was beaten. He started a business. He failed. He ran for Congress. He lost. He was nominated for vice president. He lost again. But he knew only those who never tried are the real losers. And Abraham Lincoln was no loser. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.org.